makers, this is another project I'm making for the Tim Holtz Sizzix Halloween 2024 vault release. And the two dies that I'm using from the vault release are the Fright, and for this one I'm going to be using the graveyard scene and probably some of the twigs and maybe even the moon and the clouds in the background here. This background that I have, I'm going to be putting this in this is the second to largest vignette box. So there's one that's larger and then there are two that are smaller than this one. I have cut the background and the sides already from this piece of paper. So this was just a backdrop that I had in my stash. I've been trying to use papers from my stash because it's just getting too full. And so I had done these many years ago. I'm not sure how many at this point, but I had a couple of them. And so I went ahead and cut one of them for the background. So then I will be using this, which you can see I have used for another project as well. And I may be using this to cut that graveyard scene out of that will go in the back there. And then I am going to put in front of it from last year's release, maybe an urn or one of the tombstones that'll go over here. That'll be up front, and then this little graveyard will kind of be in the back as kind of a background, and then the clouds and the moon and everything will be in the background as well on that. And then on this side, kind of over here, I want to have the coffin box, and I'm going to put some of these small bats up also in the sky from this die set. So this is going to be a very quick, simple vignette that anybody can do. So that's kind of what I've been shooting for with a lot of these vault projects and even my Idea-ology projects this year. I've been shooting for simple that everybody can do, even if you're, basically a beginner. Now for the outside of the box, I want to cover it as well. So I pulled this piece that I had from a few years ago. It has some webs on it from one of Tim's stamp sets. I'll put the name of it down here for you. I didn't get it out, but I just cut a piece that will fit across the back like that. And then for the sides, I didn't have enough with this piece to also do the sides, but I had one that had some, it was kind of the same color family, I felt like, forest moss greenish color. And so I had put some grit paste and had colored it. And so I felt like this really went with, the whole graveyard feel. And so what I'm going to do is just attach these. I cut that whole piece and then I'm going to fold them so that I have enough to get all the way around. Oops, not that one. But I figured out that if I did it this way, I could get the whole thing covered with the three pieces I got out of the one piece. And then I felt like that really went well with this on the back plan. So let's see how this turns out, and I invite you to come along and let's get making. So I've done this before, but you begin by cutting all the pieces to fit within your vignette, and then you add a nice layer of distress collage medium, and you go ahead and make sure that it is pressed down all the way around, and then you add the sides. So I start with the back and then I always do the sides. I keep one of my Inky Binkies around so that when I am pressing the paper onto the vignette to make sure it has good contact, that I can wipe off any excess of the collage medium as it kind of comes out. But this usually goes together pretty quickly, as you can see. And you did the same thing on the outside. So here I am adding a nice layer, and I'm putting this piece on the outside. Now, both areas I am going to need to sand. And so usually I will sand in between when I'm doing this. So I'll put the back on and then I'll sand around the edges to make sure that they are flush with all the sides. And then I'll usually put the sides and then I'll go ahead and sand those once they're dry and make sure that they're flush on both sides so that there's nothing hanging over. There's no, sharp pieces of paper where you could get a paper cut or something like that. I always like it to be smooth right on the edges. And you can see this goes pretty quickly. I know it's sped up, but actually in real life it goes fairly quickly as well. And just like that, I'm ready to start putting things on the inside.
All right, this should be no surprise. I've completely changed my mind. So I am not using the coffin box or last year's graveyard. So I'm sticking with Fright Night, and I am adding Wicked. So I'm going to use the pumpkin from here, the cat, the raven, and the bats from this one to go in here.
So using the pieces that I cut from Wicked and then these clouds and the moon and those things from Fright Night, I started assembling a little scene in my vignette. So the clouds and the moon are from Fright Night, and then I have the graveyard also back there from Fright Night. And now I'm going to add some cute little dimension from Wicked. So I attached cats to the back of that pumpkin. All of those are from Wicked. And then I added the little raven from Wicked as well to the front of my pumpkin. And I'm attaching the graveyard scene from Fright Night along the back and kind of on the sides as well. So it curves in the corner. And here you can see that I've folded a piece of black heavy stock into a triangle, and I've attached it to the back of that pumpkin so that it will sit up on its own. I'm trying to show you there that it sits up now. And so you want to make sure that the flat part is stuck so that it will sit up. And I just keep checking it, auditioning it, making sure that it's all gonna go, the way I want and look the way I want. So I added some little bats back there from, I think those are from Wicked. And now I'm using my branches from Fright Night. I have layered those, so I think I have 4 or 5 branches that I've cut on those. And so those are fairly thick branches that I'm going to be putting in there. But before I move on, I'm adding a little bit of collage medium and some of the thin washi tape. It's called design tape. And so this is from, I think, the Everyday line. We did have some from Halloween a few years ago, but I just love this thin design tape for covering up the edges of vignettes. It's so fast and so easy. And even though it does have adhesive on the back of the design tape, you do need to add a little bit of collage medium to make sure that they stay in place permanently. Now I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive just to the bodies of the bats. I have the wings folded up, and so those will stay in place, but add a little bit of dimension as the wings pop out from the back. I'm going to add a little bit of collage medium to the bottom of that triangle I put behind the pumpkin, and I'm going to add that to the front of the vignette. And then what you didn't see off camera was that I attached the branches, one to the front upper left of the box and one kind of in the middle of the upper right. I'm adding a little bit of glue and then some shredded pieces of mummy cloth to look like moss.
I think this is so fun. I really love it. So here it is finished. And the outside really isn't that remarkable because it just has the paper that I showed you that I had done, in a making session using some things with the crypt paste through the one of the cobblestone stencils, and then the this looks like, what was it, pumice stone maybe, distress ink, and then the cobwebs that are stamped on it. So just something to cover up the outside. That's all I was looking for, and I got that from my stash. So, that's a great way to use up your stash and not, have to take extra time to make something when you really want to get to the main event, right? So also I used some paper that I already had made here for the Boo sentiment. I have all of my well, 2 of the branches are back there with some, this is mummy cloth from Tim Holtz Idea-ology. If you don't have mummy cloth, I have used some of the Spanish moss in the same way on other makes like this before. So, and then what I did to get them to go in place is I just added some collage medium to the places where it touched the top, and I just held it there for a while until it stayed on its own. And then you don't mess with it You need to kind of really give it good time to dry, and then when you come back, you can add things like the moss or the mummy cloth, something like that. The background is something that I made as for several Halloweens ago, and I was making, so I made multiples of them to try and get the one that I really, really wanted, and then I had some left over. So I will put here which stamp set this is of Tim's and Stampers Anonymous. And then in the back, I have the clouds, the little moon, I have the bats, and the cats, the pumpkin, and the raven. The raven is from Wicked, but let's see, everything else was from Wicked and also Fright Night. And then you can see from Fright Night the little graveyard in the background. So I have two pieces. I have the main piece, and then I added another little piece that ends behind the, it kind of overlaps behind the pumpkin. Add a little more of the mummy cloth there. This is just a piece of inked paper that looks like soil. So really not much that I did there. I added a little bit of design tape here around the edge. I always love to add design tape. This is the design tape I added. It's from the regular Idea-ology line from a couple of years ago. I don't know if it is still, well, if it's been retired or not, but I have seen it available, so I know that you can still get it. And that's pretty much it. I did add a little bit of detail on the cats with some of the distressed watercolor pencils as at the same time that I was coloring the pumpkin with the distressed watercolor pencils. And I think that's pretty much it for all the details. Super fun, just little vignette for Halloween that goes together fairly quickly once you get everything kind of cut out and colored. So, as always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments for this video or on my blog at playswellwithpaper.blogspot.com. You can contact me through the contact section, so it will email me with your questions. I'm always happy to answer to the best of my ability. Sometimes I don't have an answer, and I'm sorry about that, but most of the time I can usually help you out, or I even have sent people extra pictures or whatever to help in their own creations. So I'm always happy to help. Also, if you want any of these products for your own project, they are linked in the description for this video, as well as on my blog. And yeah, I think that's it. I hope you found something inspiring in this tutorial to help you along in your own creations. And I want to wish you a very creative day.